Eco-Northwest, expecting that we would have about a 7.3% growth, or pardon me, a 5.5% underlying growth rate in the payroll tax. That's been revised down to 2% in the base funding. They revised likewise in FY10 and FY11. All of that is producing expected to produce substantially less revenue. But let me also just be absolutely clear, this is not the worst case. This is our expectation. We're still seeing a slight increase in payroll tax during this period, but you know, if unemployment rate goes up and new employment does not occur. Understand, we have, as a region, have gone through times when unemployment rates have grown, but job growth has grown as well. Because people are moving to the area, they're taking jobs, which is to say that there is not a direct offset. Everybody who gets laid off, somebody else may get hired, and those are not absolutely in connection with one another. But obviously unemployment is a very handy way to be able to see as that rate increases. It is dramatically affecting our underlying payroll tax. All of this ends up meaning that 5% reduction is necessary to be able to meet what we expect now to be able to be the FY10 revenue from payroll tax. That translates to about a $13.5 million reduction across the board. And so, not insignificant by any means. It's not the 15% that Board Member Williams and I heard in Lane Transit, but obviously it is still dramatic, and we'll come back to some of the specifics on that as well. One rule of thumb I give you is that if you kind of think about unemployment rates, and again, as I said earlier, every time there is an increase in unemployment, it is not necessary that there could at the same time be increases in employment, but in other sectors. If we really just have a reduction in jobs, they're not being replaced, and they're the average salary that's being paid in the region. This is kind of a thumbnail way of thinking about it. 1% increase in unemployment equals about $2.9 million loss in relationship to the payroll tax. So as you watch the unemployment rates, more importantly, of course, is watching the employment rate. But as the unemployment rate is usually what's being reported on, that gives you a scale of how to be able to think about this. So if unemployment rate goes up dramatically over the current 9.1% for the region, we will have to be able to be revisiting our budget as well. And I just want to make sure that you understand that although we think that the budget forecast for FY10 is reasonable, there are others who would say that's still optimistic given what the nation's economy is doing. Obviously, the work of this new administration to get the economy recharged again, we're just going to have to see what happens. All that is kind of the bad news out of it. You also have read in the news about the federal stimulus package that is being passed. It still has a ways to be able to go, because obviously the Senate has taken action on it on Monday night. The day's starting to run together here. Tuesday. Actually, final action was taken on Tuesday. If there are substantial differences between the House and the Senate version of this, and it's still kind of having to be worked through, those issues are something we're going to watch over this next week. I think optimistically, one would hope that the final votes would come sometime this weekend on the package and then on its way to the President's desk. Although there are differences, and very important ones to this state, between the House version and the Senate version, in the transit side there is not as much differences between those two versions. So we're going to have to kind of wait and see what happens. The stimulus package is, I think as you all know, fundamentally focused on job creation. It is to be able to put people back to work who have either lost their jobs or are about ready to be able to lose their jobs. But also very important within that is to be able to address failing infrastructure, compromised infrastructure. The bridge in Minneapolis, I think, highlighted this for much of the nation. But even in the transit world, much of the focus in funding in the stimulus package is about that failing infrastructure. Everything from bus purchases to subway refurbishment, rail line refurbishment, and other things. But from TriMet's standpoint, although we expect to be able to receive stimulus money to be able to address issues, if you think about it, the number one issue driving where we are budget-wise is the payroll tax. Nothing to do with the stimulus, but that's the number one driver. Second, that the federal stimulus package does not provide us operating revenue. That prohibition that came over 25 years ago, or just about 25 years ago, does prohibit operating revenue. And even though there were amendments considered on both the House side and on the Senate side, they were not added. They actually were never even voted on because of the nature of the rules. But there were efforts to be able to put operating money into transit. Those were not successful. And so number one is that that's very critical. However, we do believe that the stimulus package is able to provide investments that will in fact be very important to TriMet in the long run, to the region as a whole in the long run, and put people back to work as well. It is everything from being able to look at things such as what we've talked to you before, the switch heaters on the alignment in severe winter conditions. We believe that those types of things are in fact eligible for stimulus, but it doesn't do as much good on the operating side. There is one category of the federal funding, by the way, the federal funding is almost all going through existing formulas. So it's not as if they are creating new programs, they're really putting in money to existing formulas. One of those formulas, more than you want to know, but Section 5307 allows us to be able to address preventative maintenance. And we do believe that we can utilize some of that federal money to be able to help us address preventative maintenance. That will assist us in, as we are looking at cuts across other parts, to be able to address, to be able to cushion some of that the cuts in service that we would have otherwise not been able to address. Now, if you step back and think about some of the debate that's going on statewide about schools, the Senate version of the legislation really cut out operating money that could have been used by states to address schools. Not our issue at all, but could have been used. And as you saw in the Senate version, the compromise that came out really cut out those operating revenues. Governor Klingowski, Carol Smith here in the area, as well as across the state, all saying, hold it. That really hurts, because if it's only money to build things, replace roofs at the schools and so on, you can't really kind of keep teachers teaching, and you can't keep kids in classrooms. That same type of problem is the type of problem we're facing with that prohibition on operating.
Fred, what was the logic to establishing that prohibition?
Olivia?
That's way before my time.
That's not a good enough answer. The logic, if you guys do remember this, Neil probably does too. The logic was that operations should be a local responsibility, that the federal government should help on capital, but it was during that era of how do you reduce overall government. And one of the things that President Reagan was very strong on was that reduction. And a lot of areas that were operating assistance from the federal government were eliminated, not just in the transit world. But the goal was make that be a local cost. We'll help build the stuff, but we're not going to help operate this. What all that does is comes back to the budget as a whole. We will be taking out to public comment how we expect to be able to address that on the service side. In some cases, they can be minor adjustments to routes that just lengthen a little bit the distance between or the time that a bus would